Ever felt those awkward vibes when religion and money come up? You're not alone. Welcome to Yahweh's Money, the podcast where we tackle the crossroads of faith and finance. I'm Shay Cook, an accredited financial counselor and the CEO and founder of Crusaders for Change, LLC. Join us on our journey as we discuss topics like tithing, saving, and conquering debt through religious perspectives. Let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Yahweh's Money. Again, we have a special guest with us today, Miss Janessa, one of our C4C's financial counselors. So, how you feeling tonight?
I'm feeling good,
Yeah.
feeling great, staying warm and staying off the icy roads.
Oh,
So
yes,
good.
please. Everybody be safe out there. Some crazy stuff
Please.
going on in the world with the snow and the ice and the weather and there's
Mm-hmm.
fires and
I know.
the Lord is working it out. We pray for
Just
all
be
those
safe.
families. If you're
Yes,
affected by it indirectly or directly, definitely Godspeed. And we're here,
absolutely.
praying for you. So, but
Mm-hmm.
today we're going to discuss a big financial decision, real estate investment versus renting. So,
Yes.
should you own and invest in property, or is renting a better choice for your situation? We'll explore the pros and cons of each,
Mhm.
how real estate investors can be good stewards of their profits. Another that word again, stewards, and all through a biblical lens. So stay tuned. So Luke 16:10 says, "Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. And
Mhm.
whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with much." Amen to that. We can
Mhm.
apply this verse to renting as a wise and responsible step before transitioning to home ownership and investing. Wow.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Renting definitely it gives us it's almost like a precursor, I think, because it shows us the responsibility of taking care of a property-ish without the responsibility of taking care
Yeah.
of the property, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, like there's lots of pros and cons to renting versus buying or buying versus renting. Um, and one of the biggest, I would say, pros of renting would be a lower initial cost.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're renting, I mean, the initial costs are typically like um, a security deposit, depending on your credit, maybe
Mm-hmm.
first and last month's rent. So that can be kind of high depending on your situation.
Yep.
Of course, moving, if you're moving from one place to another, but the renting in itself typically has lower startup costs, which is so important for a lot of people who are looking for housing.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
affordable housing is a big thing in this country right now. It's so expensive, and a lot
Yes.
of people are going back to renting. And you're right. I know as we rented, whether we were with the military or we were, outside of the military. I mean, even renting can be kind of expensive, right? If you don't have, like we talked about before, the budgeting piece of it, if you're not budgeting
Mhm.
for it, but it's definitely not as expensive as a down that 10 or 3 to 5 to 10% of 100, 200, 300, 500,000. Oh my God, it's so expensive.
Yes.
And all of the fees that people do not understand goes into it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And the fees, that's the part that I think people forget about when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to owning. So like I think of the flexibility of renting.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to, yes, you sign a lease,
Mm-hmm.
12 months, depending on where you're staying, could be a little bit longer or month to month. But if you're in a mortgage,
Yeah.
you're locked in.
You're locked in.
You
Yeah.
are locked in. Like you can't getting out of a mortgage. Mm-mm.
Mm-hmm.
So that flexibility of being able to move after a certain amount of time and also changing the facility. Maybe you want to go down to a 1 bedroom or up
Mm-hmm.
to a 2 bedroom. You can do that without having to worry about selling a property and
Mm-hmm.
taxes and things of that nature. So it is nice to have that flexibility and no maintenance.
I know.
You don't have
That
to
is
cut your
the
grass.
biggest thing about owning that I like, the joys of owning. I mean, as soon as we bought this house 2 years ago, and man, it's like as soon as we buy a house, you figure out, oh, you got a lot of more stuff to do than you plan. Even if you get the best inspection and you go, literally, we were in this house for 3 hours with the inspector, going level to level,
Yes.
room to room, checking every little nook and cranny. And then we get in like, oh yeah, by the way, the AC. Oh, by the way, this thing. By the way, this thing. I'm like, oh my God. That's what
Yes.
I loved about renting. some people just came in and they fixed things. Even though I have a story to say, when I was living in Omaha, Nebraska, we were renting
Mm-mm.
apartment. I was in the bathroom and I came out, almost knocked somebody out because they were in my house trying to fix something.
Oh
I
my
cussed that
gosh.
man out. Lord, forgive me. Lord, forgive
It's
me.
okay, girl.
I
You gotta do
mean,
what you gotta
I'm
do. You
telling
were
you, what are
scared.
you doing in my house right now? It's like, why not? Well, I was in the bathroom. What if I came out here
Mhm.
naked? So, those kind of things. I mean,
Yes,
again, the joys of renting versus owning. At least I know ain't nobody gonna be coming up my house. I pray to God,
yes,
when I'm owning, because unless you got a key. But
exactly.
the renting, man, that no maintenance is a beautiful thing
Oh,
because,
yes.
man,
And I
everything's under your purview when you're owning.
yes, I think about when it was after I graduated from graduate school and I lived in the Poconos.
Mm.
And I just happened, I don't know what it is about when I move. For some reason, the winter of wherever I move is the worst that they've experienced in years. It happened in grad school when I was in Ohio. It happened in
Oh,
Pennsylvania when I
wow.
moved there.
The
It was like the
Poconos. Wow.
snowstorm, feet of
Yeah.
snow. But where I lived, the pilot light for the heat was
Mm.
blown out. So I didn't have any heat in my apartment. Now, if I own that place, I gotta pay for
You
that.
got to pay for that. You can't just call somebody, or even if you were
Yes.
renting a house, call your landlord. Because I've been there with the pilot light and had to call the landlord, right? And at least
Yes,
they showed up.
yes,
But nah,
yes.
you
And
owning
in
is
that
you.
case, yeah, and unfortunately in that case, the roads were so bad, nobody could come to the house.
Oh, man.
So, thankfully, they took some money off of my rent
Oh,
because
okay.
they sent someone within 30 minutes, it blew right back out.
Oh, God.
And they couldn't get back because the snow was so bad. But I say all that to say, when you are renting, it is the landlord, the person who owns the property, it's their
Mm-hmm.
responsibility to make sure that stuff is up to code, to make sure that's taken care of. When you own it, that's on you.
That's on you. And if you ain't got the money, or something happens, like Janessa's saying, and somebody can't come out for a couple of days, which I've had happen in our last house in Odenton here in
Mhm.
Maryland. We were in a townhome, and I think back to back, one summer we had no air conditioning for like 3 days because they couldn't come out. It was the hot dead of
Oh,
summer.
oh
So we
God.
were like, we had to sleep on the first level because it was just too hot to sleep all the way up on the
Mhm.
third level. And then one year we had no heat. And so it was like all bundled up, a couple of things, had to get some
Oh,
space heaters. So, and that was all. And thank God we had planned, had an emergency fund, but sometimes you
yeah.
can't even get somebody to come out because
Mm-mm.
everybody's affected by the same thing. So everybody ain't got AC, or everybody's, we were in a neighborhood, it seems
Exactly.
like, because they were all built around the same time. So everybody's AC unit went out at the same time. Everybody HVAC, everybody, water heater went out at the same time. So
Wow.
then now you have everybody's roof had an issue at the same time. It was just funny how everything was degrading at the same time, and you're trying to call people in like, well, I got all these other tickets, and so
Mhm.
so there's all these different reasons. But when you're owning, that's on you. When they're renting, there's that responsibility. Unless you have one of them crazy renter, owners, landlords, and they ain't
Yeah.
gonna do what they're supposed to do. But that's a whole nother story.
But then there's legal ramifications
Well,
behind that.
there is, but then you
So
might not have no money to do anything.
that part is true. That's a whole nother story. But yeah, it's renting. Renting can definitely provide you, that flexibility, low initial cost, low maintenance. And in some places and in some situations, rent is actually cheaper. Depending on, I mean, now that unfortunately the rent is getting very high.
Very high.
So if you like roommates and you're okay sharing space, share some space.
So I
It's
told my
okay.
24-year-old daughter, she's like, I don't know when I'm going to be able to rent. I was like, you're going to have to get a couple
About,
roommates.
look, about to be a lot of multi generations in one house,
Yes.
multiple roommates, and that is okay
And it is okay.
because
There's nothing wrong with that.
being in a community is
Mm-hmm.
beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the happiest places in the world often have communal living. So
Yes,
ain't
very
nothing wrong
true.
with living with other people. Just
Not
want to
at
put that
all.
out there.
Not at all.
But in some cases, rent is actually cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
Flip side of that, rent can go up. So because someone else owns the property, they can determine um, how much they want to charge. And unfortunately, rent is not regulated in a
Yeah.
lot of places. So there is that other side where it can go up pretty substantially depending on where you live. And also with the landlord situation, if you do run into an issue with the landlord and they're problematic, if you don't have the money to take them to court, you're kind of stuck with it.
Exactly.
So renting can definitely give you options,
Mm-hmm.
but there are, the cons of it is because it's someone else's property. If you're in a house,
Mm-hmm.
they want to sell the house, you got to
You
go.
gotta go.
Yeah.
I hear that
So,
story a lot from our clients that, are in
yes.
that situation, or when they tell me about the size of their apartment or even their house that they're renting and their rent is way higher than my
Mhm.
mortgage. And I'm like, girl, or son, like, really?
Oh
Like,
gosh.
it's crazy. My sister and I were talking about that a couple weeks ago. It's like people's $3,000 and $4,000 a month. And I'm like, what? That's way more than my mortgage.
And
Like,
you're in
what
a
are y'all here?
studio? Like, what? Like, does it come with the president feeding you food or something? Like, why is it so high?
Why is it so high? Do you have
Oh my goodness.
Oh my God. I mean, that's why,
Mm-mm.
I'm grateful that, again, to God that I can own, because that is a whole
Mhm.
nother situation. But, long-term wealth building comes from usually
Yes.
real estate. 9 out of 10 millionaires have made their money through real estate. So,
Mhm.
but again, God is trusting that in us to be stewards of that still. Like, and
Yes.
having that real estate is great. But it does provide a stability in life and equity and appreciation, which is nice. It's not
Mhm.
depreciating like them cars. It tends to increase over time, and equity increases as the mortgage is paid off. So that's a great
Yes.
asset to have.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think when it comes to wealth building, owning property, owning land should be one of the first things discussed
Mm-hmm.
because, like you're saying, it's an appreciating asset
Mm-hmm.
and it's physical.
Yeah.
Like we don't talk a lot about the uh don't get me to line about what the actual word is. I think it's commodities. I think
Commodity.
that's,
Yep.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So like having that physical thing
Mm-hmm.
that is an actual asset is so beneficial
Mm-hmm.
because I don't want to say what if the world goes into shambles, but if you literally have land, if anything, you have land. You can grow food on that land. You can live on that land. It is yours. And wealth wise, like it appreciates over time and it is something that you own. So having real estate, having property is so important if you are trying to build that wealth.
Mm-hmm.
And generational wealth is something you can pass down from
Mm-hmm.
family to family. It is something that can continue to contribute way
Exactly.
past, you being here. As
Exactly.
morbid as it may sound. But, yeah, that long-term stability in life and that appreciating asset is so huge with owning that land.
That's why I think a lot of wars are started from the power of that in the land. That's what we're seeing overseas right now, right? It's been going on for
Mhm.
generations. Is
Mhm.
that land? God's not getting creating more land, people. Like what we got here,
It's
unless you're
there.
going to go to another universe or planet,
Right.
as Mars or something like. And on this Earth, we ain't got no more free.
It's
That's
there.
it. It's just
Right.
that's it,
Or
right?
unless you
So.
figure out a way to live in the ocean, which I don't suggest it. Ain't no telling what's down there, y'all. It,
Especially what's going on right now. Like,
Ooh, girl,
we'll stay away from that.
it's so big. Like there's so much. I think they said we've only discovered like 20%.
Of the 70% of the world, like it's winning it like 70%, or am I thinking about water of the body?
Well, I think I want to say the majority of the earth is covered by water,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
we've only like discovered or explored
I think
20% of
yeah, you're
it.
right. I love
And like,
watching those documentaries on that.
yes, I
Yeah.
didn't know NASA was created to study the ocean
Oh.
initially. Yeah,
Oh,
it was
nice.
originally studying the ocean, then they decided to study space.
Wow.
Why? Either way, unless you can figure out how to live in the ocean, there's not going to be any other place for you
Exactly.
to have physical space.
Yeah, exactly. And
So,
so if your family can give you pass that along, that is a blessing. Or if you can
absolutely.
go buy some land, buy some property, and now the property or the houses they put on the land, it's like, you know, especially here in Maryland.
Yes,
And I ain't
ooh.
even talking about my own house. We bought this nice big home, but we ain't got much land because there ain't much land
Mhm.
here to give. Like,
Mhm.
so and if it is, it's not usable. It's marsh, it's swamps, it's like,
Yeah.
all of that stuff too has to be considered. So,
Mhm.
but real estate can be rented out and generate passive income too. So
Oh,
we buy
yes.
that land, we buy that real estate. Now we can rent it out and make more money. right? So it helps with
Mm-hmm.
that generational or that long-term wealth building.
Absolutely. I love the when people want to utilize their property to potentially bring in additional income. And
Mm-hmm.
then if you have the ability to buy more than one property, then you're building that portfolio and
Mm-hmm.
building multiple streams of income, which is very important and helpful because it allows you to not be dependent on just one stream. So yes, renting it
Exactly.
out and the tax benefits,
Oh my God. Yeah.
those taxes, if you can get benefits with taxes, get it.
For real,
Please.
we see the celebrities that they have enough money in their bank account to buy a house, but they're like, "Nah, I'm buying this and getting a mortgage because I need that tax deduction."
Mm-hmm.
So there's a
Mm-hmm.
reason why these celebrities have these mortgages still because that tax benefit is huge. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. So yeah, there's pros and cons for each of them. I think it just depends on the situation. It depends on what you can afford. That's why budget is important.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then also like goals.
Mm.
So you don't have to like if you're renting now, that doesn't mean you're going to rent for the rest of your life.
Yeah,
And if you buy a property now, it doesn't mean you will never rent again.
that is so
It's
true. Yeah.
because I know people who have sold their property and went back to renting because they're like, I just don't want to deal with it anymore. And
Especially
then
people
there's
as you grow older, like my mother-in-law and people I talk to, they
Mhm.
would love to pass it along, but they're like, "You guys are good. You guys got your house now." My mother-in-law, she only has one kid. I only have one kid, and so and my daughter's like, "I don't want this house," so it's like, okay,
So I
so
don't want it.
which yeah, she want to do her own thing, and I appreciate that. So then they're like, "Well, maybe I'll just go back to renting," because as you get older, all of the maintenance, all the stuff we already talked about, it's a lot. It's a huge burden. It's a beautiful burden, beautiful blessing, I
Mhm.
say. But I was thinking the other day, I was putting up Christmas lights. I was on the ladder, and I was like, I'm 46, so I turned 46 in December, so last month. And
Haven't
so,
related.
thank you. And so I was on this ladder putting up these Christmas lights. It was funny because my neighbor was like, "You do everything." I'm like, "I like being outside." My daddy was one of those like, "Get outside." I like to do the grass stuff. My husband helps though too. And so, anyways, I'm on this ladder, and the ladder's really heavy, and I had to get my husband to move it or whatever. I'm like, if I'm 60, 70, I am not getting up on this ladder putting up these
Mm-mm.
lights. Like, I mean, and
Mm-mm.
I'm
No,
not
thank
going to
you.
be doing a lot of things like when I'm crawling, like when my bug guy comes and he goes in the attic, I'll go up in the attic with him and check things out. And I'm like, I'm not going to want to climb up in this attic at 70.
No,
Hopefully, God is my body's still in functioning
it will be,
well, and
girl.
I'm
It
good.
will be.
I'm saying that part, but I'm just like, oh my God, just feeling my knees and all the kind of cramps and stuff you get now when you get older, and
Mhm.
but yeah, I'm just thinking about that. So I'm like, maybe I'm gonna have to rent later, or maybe and maybe still keep the house as an asset, rent it out, but then
Mhm.
rent somewhere else so somebody can take care of the
Mhm.
maintenance and hire a house manager or something.
Mhm. Or build a
But
tiny house.
my
I
husband's always
really
watching
like
those
tiny
videos.
houses. I
They're
love
so
tiny
cute.
houses. They're amazing. They're amazing. And it's like it could be the size of an apartment,
Yeah,
but you own it.
you own it.
But yes, that definitely as as we grow older and wiser, we may not be able to do as many things to upkeep properties. And so
Yeah,
owning that is a long term investment
yeah,
because
and
while it
commitment too.
appreciates in value,
It
it
really
still
is.
costs money to maintain it.
Yes, exactly.
So,
And people forget about all of those fees that go
mhm.
into, we didn't even talk about that, but owning real estate and outside of the closing costs, the down payment, all that. I always tell people, you guys need to have some kind of, oh God, I'm about to blank on it, reserves
Yes.
for all, even though you have an emergency fund, you need to have a reserve fund on top of that
Yes.
because when we was COVID, AC, whole HVAC, water heater, roof. We had to replace all in 1 year.
Oh my gosh, that's so
And
much.
I ain't rich. Okay. So I was like, thank God when USAA came out, I was like, oh, well, some of this might have been damaged from a storm previously. So we'll cover half of that. I'm like, thank you. But a roof is like 15 to 20,000. So we still had
Yes.
to come out like 7,000 there. Then literally the HVAC. And then, all these things started happening. But God, right? Because
Hey.
guess what? A year or two later, we sold that house for record profit. And because
Yeah.
we had all that stuff taken care of,
Mm-hmm.
the new owners coming in, or the buyers, they didn't have to do an inspection because we had all that. So
All of that
God
paper.
knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
He had a
Yeah.
plan. But I was
But
like, I
during.
cannot believe we were hit with a roof, an HVAC, a water heater all
Oh
in
my
1 year.
gosh.
It was
Yes.
crazy. So as I tell people, you got to have 5-10% of reserve funding on top of whatever your house costs. That 5-10% of the house value in your savings, because you never know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like, down payment is not all you need when you're
Exactly.
getting a house.
Yeah.
So when they're like, "Oh yeah, I want to save X amount for a down payment," I'm like, "Okay, how much do you have beyond the down payment?" And they're
Mm-hmm.
like, "No, that's about it." And I'm like, "Well, you also have to consider, you want an emergency fund.
Mm-hmm.
You also want money for maintenance. You also
Mm-hmm.
want money for closing costs and money for moving."
Exactly.
Because I'm
And
quite
then what
sure.
about all the windows that you want to put in, all the furnishings and all of that? Or you're going to be house poor. You're
Exactly.
going to be in this house. You ain't got nothing.
Exactly, exactly. There's so much more that goes into owning a house
Yeah,
besides the mortgage. And
exactly.
that's what we have to pay attention to. Like, it's great to own a house. I do
Mm-hmm.
think if you have the ability to and the stamina to own a house, that's great. But before doing it, look at all the aspects of owning a property, because it
Mm-hmm.
is just more than a monthly payment. It's
Mm-hmm.
more than that. And that's the biggest difference between renting and owning. Renting, you just pay that monthly payment. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Owning, it's
It's much
much,
more.
much more.
And then what if you do have real estate profits? God wants us to be a good steward of it. So not only should we be generous as our profits increase, we should give back and share what God has blessed with us. But also, you want to maintain your integrity, operate with honesty when dealing with tenants to keep your property safe and maintained. As we said, there are some, what is they call, not loan sharks. What are they? Loans,
um,
yeah, landlords are bad people.
Slumlords.
Slumlords, that's the word. Yep. And so
Mm-hmm.
we don't want to be out here slumming it. We
Mm-mm,
want to be honest when we're
mm-mm.
dealing with our tenants and keep it safe and maintain, and not just go up on prices just because. What the
Yes.
profits God has given to us, and we need to do the right thing.
Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. And like with the price gouging, unfortunately, so many people who own properties are doing that, which is making it
Mm-hmm.
difficult for people to live.
To lit,
Like,
yeah.
if you have the ability to, if you are renting out your space and you're making profits, I think the best example of if you don't need to, why is the owner of the Amazon tea, who said he's
Mm.
never going to charge more than 99 cents. He's like, we're making good money. Why would I change that?
Mm-hmm.
If you own a property and you're making great money, why price gouge? Why
Mm.
make it difficult for the residents, especially if you have great residents? If you're a great
Yeah.
landlord, you will have loyal residents. They
Mm-hmm.
will make sure they pay you on time. If there are any issues, they're going to try to work with you. Like, if you create the space that allows them to live a flourishing life,
Mm-hmm.
then they're going to make sure that that property is also flourishing, because they
Yeah.
recognize other places are not the same. So please avoid being greedy. Let's not be greedy. um, and it's nice to do updates and things to your properties, but um, getting caught up in making things overly luxurious, that's when you
Mm.
start getting into that overspending and doing more than what's possibly needed. Because then if you're
Mm-hmm.
putting all that in your house, then you're going to start charging more and you could outprice yourself. Now your profit is gone and you got this property you can't afford anymore.
Exactly.
So definitely, plan for your future. And when you're reinvesting, and reinvest wisely, and
Mm-hmm.
try your hardest to be ethical. Like,
Mm.
y- money is an inanimate object and it's just a tool to
Just
cover
a
needs and wants.
tool.
That's all it is.
Just a
So if you're
tool.
able to live a thriving and flourishing life, just ask yourself, what would be the point of charging more or doing more or making it difficult for others? Like, what is the point?
What is the
So,
point? Yeah. And
yeah.
I'm just going to reiterate what Luke 16:10 says, as I said at the top of this episode, is whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. And whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with much. So we want
Mhm.
to be, honest. We want to be trusted. We want to do right with what God has given us. So, yeah.
Yes,
Any last
indeed.
words?
Yes. I would just say, don't jump into something too fast just because others are doing it. It's okay to take your time.
Yep.
And like I said, if you want to own a property and you rent right now, that's absolutely possible. And if you own a property and you're like, I can't do this anymore, it's okay to sell and go back to renting.
Exactly. No shame.
Yes.
No shame. Do what's right for you. Exactly.
Yes.
Hey,
that's it.
There you go. Well, that was amazing, Janessa. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Y'all have a good day. We'll talk soon. A big thank you for listening to this episode. We hope you found today's chat about the intersection of religion and money insightful. We would love to hear your feedback. Hit that subscribe button or follow the podcast. And please feel free to leave us a review. For the latest Yahweh's Money content, visit us at Crusaders, 4change.org, or find us anywhere you listen to podcasts. Until next time, stay financially fit and spiritually inspired. And remember, it's always better Yahweh's way.